Hey everyone, Rich Gasaway here. Before I get today's episode started, I wanted to let you know that I have a few program openings available in November and December of this year for situational awareness programs. Has your department hosted a Situational Awareness Matters tour stop event yet? No? Seriously? What in the world are you waiting on? Did you know that issues related to situational awareness or the barriers that flaw awareness are implicated in nearly every significant firefighter casualty report? It's a really, really big deal. The problem is most firefighters know so little about it. They think so long as they're paying attention or keeping their head on a swivel that they have good situational awareness. And as anyone who's attended any of my programs can tell you, this is simply not the case. Sure, paying attention is part of situational awareness development, but it isn't all of it. There is so much more. Those who think it's just a matter of paying attention are uninformed. Don't be uninformed on a topic this important, a topic that literally can save your life. There's so much at stake. As situational awareness serves as the foundation for good decision making, and it's the good decision making that will drive the actions that lead to our successful outcomes or to our catastrophic outcomes. Go to the SAMatters.com website and click on the Contact Us link. Do it today, and it will get something set up for you right away. Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com.
This is Fire Chief William Ball from the Williamsport Fire and EMS, and you're listening to SA Matters Radio with Dr. Richard Gasaway. The SA Matters mission is simple. They want to help us see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes.
Hello, and welcome to episode 118 of the Situational Awareness Matters radio show. I'm your host, Rich Gasaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence environments. The SA Matters mission is simple, to help you see the bad things coming and time to avoid bad outcomes. I'm coming to you today from Shawnee, Oklahoma, where I'm in town to deliver a situational awareness program for the Shawnee Fire Department and others in the region. Thank you, David Underwood, for your efforts to bring this valuable training to your members and to others. If you're interested in attending an upcoming Situational Awareness Matters tour stop, head over to the SA Matters website and click on the blue box on the right side labeled Upcoming Event Schedule. More than 500 agencies on 4 continents have hosted Situational Awareness Matters tour stop events. I mentioned at the top of the show that I'm booking for November and December 2016. I'm also actively booking the 2017 program, so contact me now if you're interested in getting on that schedule. Here's a tip how you can host a program at a reduced cost. I schedule many what I call companion programs. These are programs on adjoining days to other programs. So if you see I'm delivering a program within a couple hours of your department and you think you might want to come along as a companion, contact me. You can save as much as 20% off the program costs by being a companion to an existing program. That's what I did a couple weeks ago in Texas when I did the Texas Interagency Mutual Aid Association Conference, and then Sci-Fair came along as the companion. And then I did a program for Eastern Michigan University in Ypsilanti, and Brighton Area Fire came along as the companion. And then I did a program for the Montana Fire Chiefs Alliance Conference, and then Spokane Fire Department came along as the companion. If you want to be put on the let me know when you're going to be in my area list, just contact me through the SA Matters website. Click on the Contact Us link. Okay, in today's feature segment, I interview Division Chief Dan Phannenstiel from the West Metro Fire Rescue Department in Colorado. They had 2 multi-alarm fires back-to-back with a near-miss event. On January 18th, 2009, the West Metro Fire Rescue Department responded to a multi-alarm fire in a garden-style apartment building. They had just returned from that call when they were dispatched to a multi-alarm fire that was wind-driven that involved multiple residential dwellings. This is a two-part interview. In part one, we discuss the two fires, and then in part two, we discuss the lessons learned from the near-miss event. Okay, let's jump into my interview with Division Chief Dan Phannenstiel from West Metro Fire.
So I work for West Metro Fire. It's a special district in Colorado, and it's situated on the west side of the Denver metro area. And currently, because we just merged with another fire department, the town of Wheat Ridge to our north, we now encompass about 120 square miles. We protect somewhere around 350 nighttime residents. We have 17 stations.
Whoa. You said 350 residents?
350,000 residents.
There you go.
Nighttime residents, yeah.
You said 350.
Wow.
Yes. 17 stations.
That's not
for
very many for
18 people.
or 17 stations.
that'd be pretty good coverage. Go ahead.
It would be. It'd be great coverage.
All right.
So yeah, we cover about 350,000 nighttime residents. And we do have industry in our area, light industry, and then we have some recreational. So we have people traveling, in and out of our district all the time. So our daytime population is probably a little bit higher. We run somewhere around 27,000 calls a year. We are an all-hazards fire department, like so many are around the nation, and we are fire-based EMS. So we do have a large incidence of EMS calls as well.
You transport?
We do transport.
Okay.
We run like 9 medic units, and currently we run 3 trucks, and we run 16 engines. One of our trucks is a Quint and runs as an engine in a tower on the south end of town, and then we run 10 medic units, with 9 of those being staff full time, and 1 is a cross staff. But at the time of the fires that we're going to be speaking with, we weren't quite as large. We didn't have the Wheat Ridge stations to our north, so we were really a 15-station department. But we had three trucks and a heavy rescue, so we actually had more staffing back then than we do now.
Okay. So set up the day for us. We're going to talk about 2 fire incidents, but set up the day as to what the day was like as far as on-duty staffing, what kind of, how busy was it, weather, things like that.
Yeah, so the days we're talking about really are in January in 2009, and it was uncomfortably warm. We're in Colorado, and you'd expect to have snow, but it wasn't the case. I mean, it was t-shirt weather this time of the year, which is odd. But we run 3-man engines for the most part, unless the engine is the only resource at the station, and they have 4 people. And we run 4-person towers. The towers actually have pumps, so they can initiate a fire attack as well. And we had a 4-man heavy rescue, and then 2-person medic units. We also, at the time, had 3 district chiefs, with the center district chief being a shift commander. And one of his focuses is to go both directions, both to District 1 and District 3, to provide more oversight at the command level. And that was a new concept for us. We do work the 48-hour shift, the 4896, and it was relatively new for us at this time. And this was the first shift. And we're going to be talking about 2 fires, because while my 30 years of fire experience, we've had back-to-back fires before, I don't ever remember having back-to-back multiple alarm fires that were rapidly expanding to this degree. So that part's relatively unusual for us.
With the same crews to both fires too, right?
Exactly, yeah. Right, with the same crews to both fires.
Yeah.
And the first fire came in on July the 18th at 11 o'clock in the evening.
January 18th.
I'm sorry, January the 18th of 2009
That's
at 11 o'clock. And I'd have to say that, the acting officer at the time did okay, but we identified some areas where they really could have done better. One of the things they did that was good was call for a second alarm. However, as a result of calling the second alarm right out of the station. We had a lot of the rigs arriving with not a whole lot of orchestration, and that's always chaotic when you arrive on scene as a chief officer and you've got people coming in. What'd
that call come in as?
It came in as a working structure fire.
Residential?
No, it's a multifamily. It's really a garden level plus 3 stories above, so you can articulate it as a 4-story apartment building.
How many units?
Oh, wow. I think there was probably 12 to 16 per floor, so relatively large, like maybe 50 deep by 200 long, with 2 stairwells on the front and 2 stairwells on the back, and they're not sprinklered. But they did have a dry standpipe on all 4 floors, and that actually factors into the first fire. So the fire really started on like the 1st-story balcony on the Alpha Delta corner. And the way this structure is constructed is there's like a mansard facade that wraps the building on the corners. So this fire that starts on the deck not only penetrates into the living quarters, but also gets into this mansard chaseway and extends fire to floors, 3 and 4, or 2 and 3, depending on how you're gonna label them. So when they got on scene, they had fire essentially on 3 floors, and it looked impressive, no doubt. When I got on scene, I was a second dude chief, and I was listening to the radio transmissions coming in. And when I got on scene, you still had active fire, on that corner, wrapping both directions and penetrating all 3 floors. And there was a handline on the outside trying to knock down that fire while there were people going up one of the stairwells connecting into the standpipe. And then one of our engines reversed laid to a hydrant, and they were going to pump into the standpipe, which I thought was totally appropriate. What adds to the sort of drama of this call is something happens at the hydrant to that first initial, or that engine that's going to supply the standpipe, and the hydrant connection spins off or kinks. Needless to say, there's no water to the standpipe for 23, 24, 25 minutes. So these guys are standing in the stairwell, with a dry line, having dialogue with, where's the water? Not
for 20 minutes.
Yeah, roughly 20 minutes. By the time they get up there, so a little bit shorter period of time. But
wow.
It wasn't our best day in terms of getting water on the fire quickly.
When they were in there without water, just curious, did they back out, or did they hold their position and just keep calling for water?
They were in the stairwell.
Okay. Yeah. Exterior stairwell or interior?
Yeah, it was an interior stairwell that's protected by a fire door, so they were in a safe position. I mean, they certainly had some smoke that was creeping in, but they were in a safe spot, and they could have easily went down that stairwell and been in a safe place.
Okay, so they weren't up in the heat of it hollering for water.
No, exactly.
All right, good.
So, and we, again, we have exterior streams off of tank water and maybe a secondary water supply deployed on the outside, knocking some of that fire down, which was important, in this scenario. So I went to the command post, and he was trying to wrap his mind around the accountability and did we have the primary search benchmarks completed on the first floor, second floor, and third floor, or second, third, and fourth, depending on how you want to label it with that garden level. And it wasn't really clear where everybody was and what we've accomplished. So myself and the safety officer scotted up, and we went into the far side stairwell and started on the bottom floor. And there was some smoke, but minimal. And then one floor up, there was a little bit more smoke, but you could reasonably tell that everybody was evacuated. Then we went to the third floor, a little bit more smoke, so you could tell that the fire had penetrated some of those living units on that Alpha Delta corner, and was starting to, create conditions in the hallway. But when we got to the fourth floor, where guys were forcing doors and evacuating people and searching, the conditions went from, medium amount of smoke to a lot of smoke within seconds. And at the same time, the incident commander announced that we had a partial collapse to the Charlie side of the structure. Well, and that's interesting because when I got on scene, the bulk of the fire was on the Delta Alpha corner. And I remember being down on the floor, going, wow, conditions changed fast. And if we have partial collapse on that Charlie side, that means that fire wrapped around that structure, and we're in a bad spot. So we backed out and reorganized. It turns out that the partial collapse really was the facade falling away from that Alpha Delta corner. So you can see that the miscommunication of the location of the partial collapse really made me react in a manner which I'd be, much rather be safe than sorry at that point. But it made me get out, it made me withdraw the troops because we clearly didn't have hand lines in place on the inside. We didn't have good accountability, and with the conditions changing so dramatically and me believing that the fire wrapped the building, it was time to withdraw, re-understand what our critical fireground factors were, and then re-engage if we could, which is what we did. So that was the first fire, and long story short is we ended up creating our own standpipe of 2.5, and then, stretched it up to the 4th floor and then wide off and had hand lines working, put out the fire, appropriate men overhaul at the roof level, cleared the building, and we're wrapping up and going home around 2 o'clock in the morning.
Any injuries?
No injuries. Yeah, no injuries.
And all the civilians got out? Because that's right at the witching hour there.
It was. And it's interesting because that fire's up in the neck of the woods where we have historically had difficult fires to fight. It's on an address called Holman Way. And if you mention that to anybody at West Metro, they sort of shudder and go, yeah, been up there a lot. So we were all returning back to quarters around 2:15 the next day, January the 19th, when another alarm came in with the same units. And at first, it sort of caught you off guard. In that, I thought, man, something's wrong with dispatch. They're banging out the same tone again. Then you realize that it was a different address, just all with the same units. So we were off and running to our second fire, lickety-split. Some people had time to, change out the bunkers. Everybody was able to change out their bottles and stuff, but nobody really had rehab time per se. Mm-hmm. So the second fire is up in a single-family residential building that sits kind of up on top of a hill, which is subject to a fair amount of wind that can come down the Rocky Mountain Canyon right out of Morrison and into Lakewood. And so the winds were kind of out of the west at 20 miles to 25 miles an hour that night. Mm. And that comes into play a little bit.
I bet.
I was approaching from the east, and the amount of smoke and embers 4 and 5 blocks away was impressive, so there was no doubt in my mind going into this fire that it was a working fire and it was evolving fast. Interestingly, the first on-scene officer, he gave a spectacular size-up, but he was on the wrong radio channel.
From the previous fire?
What's that?
Was he on the channel from the previous fire?
No, he was on F-Dispatch, and he should have been on our tactical channel, which would have been TAC 3.
Okay.
So what we do is we get dispatched on a dispatch channel, and they move us over to a tactical channel.
Okay.
So in this case, he gave the size up on the dispatch channel. I heard it because I scan all the channels, but everybody else, they don't have scanning features. So, like I said, it was a great size up, just nobody heard it. Mm. So other units coming in.
Can you kind of paraphrase what the size up was? I mean, not chapter and verse, but kind of just general.
Absolutely. So the neighborhood we're talking about are single-family structures, and they're all 2 stories in the front and 3 stories in the back with walkout basements and big, huge wooden decks. So they're 3,500 square feet of lumber. and they're relatively close together. And when he got on scene, he had a tremendous amount of fire showing from the backside of the fire unit. He did a quick peek on the walk around, and he had almost full involvement of that Charlie side of the building. And they actually had a hydrant right out front, so they caught the hydrant and started deploying hand lines on not only the structure, but more importantly, the two exposures, because that was kind of the closest thing to where they were at.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
So,
hold on.
Sure.
You had given me a lessons learned report that has some photographs in it. So the photographs showing the fire involvement, were those photos, what was the proximity of time that those photos were taken in relation to the first units arriving? Was that before or right as or within 5 minutes of? Because this is an impressive amount of fire I'm looking at here.
It is. It is an impressive amount of fire. It wasn't when they were first on scene, but it's not 15 or 20 minutes into the scene. It's relatively a short time frame after they got on scene.
Wow.
So
this thing is rocking, and I'm guessing the wind helped that.
Yeah, it did. And so the first chief that got on scene came from the north, and he got on the Alpha side. I came from the south and east. And when I came in on one block behind the fire, and then walked through the backyard of what would be the adjacent block, but the Charlie exposure. And when I walked through that backyard, spot fires were happening, that adjacent block over, and the heat was so intense from just the sheer fuel load and the wind pushing it, that the windows in the house on the next block were starting to break and fail. Wow. So I make a transmission. It's in my lessons learned document. I said, let's try to keep this to 3 houses. And I was serious. I'm like, wow, I don't know that we're going to keep this to 3 houses if we don't get a handle on this soon.
Wow.
Yeah, it was rapidly expanding. The fire unit itself. The fire started in the hot tub area on the walkout basement of this one house. So, and then you had a wooden deck above it. So you had a tremendous amount of fuel vertical, and then obviously with the wind conditions, you just had complete involvement of that back side, and then of course it penetrated the house.
Is the Charlie side the windward side?
The Charlie side, so the wind's kind of out of the Bravo side. I'm sorry, the Delta side.
Okay.
So it's coming kind of, if you're facing the house, the wind's kind of coming from right to left.
Okay.
But the heat was so intense, even with the wind, it was still igniting the Delta 1 exposure.
Which is pretty close. I mean, I would encourage the listeners to go to the show notes and look at the photographs, and it gives a lot of perspective here.
Yeah, they really are close. The separation is maybe, at most 15 feet and maybe 10 feet. Yeah. There's a little bit of a curvature on the street, so it sort of tilts the houses in a pie shape, makes them a little bit closer on the backside.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got on scene and walked through the back of the Charlie side, exposure, the deck was collapsing, and some of the wood on the Charlie side of the fire unit was starting to fall off, and the fire was not only igniting the Delta 1 exposure, which was upwind, but it was heavily involving the Bravo 1 exposure on the outside and on the inside. And that was my comment of like, all right, we've got 3 houses going, and the windows are popping on the house that I'm standing in their backyard on. Let's see if we can keep it here.
Mm-hmm.
So we ordered up a second alarm, and eventually it turned into, sort of a second alarm plus. We really can't support a true third alarm fire, but for all practical purposes, it was more than 2 alarm fire.
Okay.
Hand lines.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
What are the resources for a first alarm to this? And then tell me what resources the second alarm brings, and then tell me what your second alarm plus resources are.
Yeah. So we would have 2 engines plus a dedicated, RIT unit as our first alarm assignment, plus a tower, plus a heavy rescue, plus 2 medics, plus 2 chiefs. That would be the first alarm assignment. The second alarm assignment brings really an ops page, which brings as many chiefs as possible to the scene, including the PIO, plus our third truck, plus 3 more engines and a medic.
Okay.
And then the additional really was just medics and engines and overhead staff, including rehab.
Okay. Okay.
So that's what that looked like then. We had 4 hydrants supplying this firefight, 2 on the front, 1 to an engine and 1 to a tower, and then on the backside, 2 hydrants that were supplying engines that were engaging in the firefight on the exposures. Really, the firefight on the fire unit itself wasn't going to be handled by any kind of a hand line.
Were the water mains sufficient to handle 4 hydrants and use?
Normally they are. We have a really good water system in Colorado, but we did call the water district and asked them if they would send us a representative in case we needed to have them bump the pressure. And they showed up, and honestly, that's the first time in 30 years we've ever called them, and that's the first time they've ever showed up. But turns out we were spaced out far enough away that water wasn't our issue.
Okay.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, you don't see very many fires in residential areas where they're tapping 4 hydrants.
No, it's so true, and I remember the guys going, this isn't that big of a deal, it's just we're just doing our job, and I'm like, it wasn't too soon previous to the fire that I think there was a fire up in a community in Alberta, Canada, where they lost like a whole community in a similar, just single-family homes where, a wind-driven fire just pushed the fire from house to house to house, and they just couldn't manage it. So we were really in a position where, we needed to affect some change fairly quick, or we were likely to, lose more than just the 3 houses.
Oh yeah, and are they all wood-sided, like the one that
they are. Yeah, they are. So they're 2 stories in the front, they're 3 stories in the back. There's plenty of brush around them, and it was windy. And again, for January, it was warm. Like it was T-shirt weather. Not that really factors into the fire spread per se, but we weren't fighting snow and ice, which was nice.
Yeah, right.
So. What makes this phone call, the reason why you and I sort of hooked up on this whole conversation, really stems from an awareness that I made, or an observation I made as the Charlie Side Division souped, but failed to react appropriately. And I think that's the lesson that we want to remind everybody about, that being situationally aware is one thing, but you have to react appropriately as well. And as a chief officer managing the backside of this structure fire, I made the announcement to command. I said, hey, look, we've got an aerial apparatus going up and about ready to fight the fire from the top down, not only on the fire unit, but on the Bravo 1 exposure. But more importantly, we got people in the Bravo 1 exposure. And so my concern is we'd be in a position where we'd be putting the master stream, on a unit where people were on the inside, which is a good observation. And I made the announcement to command, and he copied. And for whatever reason, I went about my business managing my division, and the master stream went into play. And I found out after the fact that a fair amount of ceiling and roof came down on those guys on the inside that they didn't extract. or didn't evacuate, and so that led to the near miss, which led to me submitting a near miss, and one of the criticisms of myself, within the lessons learned is that communication loop is so important.
But you communicated it, he acknowledged it.
Yeah.
So where's your culpability as you say it broke down for you? I mean, you made the announcement and he acknowledged it. I guess it would have been a reasonable assumption on your part to think that the action would then follow that conversation. No?
Well, yeah, yes and no. I understand your logic, but what I really should have done was I should have just said, "Hey, Tower 3, stop. We've got people in the Bravo 1 exposure, and until they're extricated or evacuate, don't go into play." Okay. And that really should have been the appropriate message. I think I communicated to the incident commander, and honestly, I can't tell you what my thought process was back then, but it feels to me like, okay, I did my part, but I didn't. I should have said stop. And if you look back at the first fire, I did say stop. Wow, conditions in the hallway are changing. I think the fire is in a position that's unusual and has moved in a place that's sort of changed safety mechanisms or the safety matrix. And I made the decision to withdraw, which I think is the right decision. But for whatever reason, on the second fire, I make the observation. I just don't make the decision to make the announcement and implement the withdrawal or the stop of the aerial apparatus. So I don't know where that disconnect was, but it was there.
So what was the consequence? You said there was a close call. What happened?
Yeah, so the Tower 3, put a fair amount of water from an elevated stream down on the fire unit, but also on the Bravo 1 unit, where those guys were on the inside trying to fight the fire from the inside out. But the aerial master stream really pushed a lot of heat and fire and sealing and stuff down on that attack crew on the inside. So, they took a fairly good beating from heat and falling debris. Neither one of them, lost any time, but they certainly were, put them in a position where they shouldn't have been.
Okay. Did the interior crew know that the master stream was being deployed, or did that just happen and then it just, the consequence was so quick that they didn't have time to really, maybe make a radio announcement to stop flowing the aerial water?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think the overall plan from command was to get a master stream. We were on the backside with several 2.5s, and it wasn't even touching it. It wasn't touching the fire unit at all, and it was barely making a dent on the Bravo 1 exposure. So needing more GPMs, was key. And I can't speak for everybody, but I think, just out of the nature of the beast, people seeing the aerial apparatus going up on that front side, they understood what was trying to be achieved. But, I do remember having dialogue with the officer from that master stream. He wasn't aware that there were people in the Bravo 1 exposure fighting fire. He felt equally as horrible, because of this. So, there's ownership on, all the way around. Like, we have to announce to people that we're going to be defensive on the fire unit and offensive on the exposures. And if that strategy changes, we have to announce, withdraw, and take apart before we engage in that defensive firefight. So, I guess to answer your question, no, the guys on the inside had no idea that this was coming.
Were there any injuries?
No, I remember one of the gentlemen, no, lost time from work, but he had a minor shoulder injury from being sort of, pushed down to the ground and I don't know, roughed up, I guess, if you would, from the mechanical force of the master stream and the stuff coming down. But, we're lucky. I mean, it really is. It really does meet the definition of a near miss in a lot of ways. we could have lost those firefighters just out of sheer collapse and not even have been accountable with them. So we're glad that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But we're equally as glad that they were able to get out with their SCBA intact and everything else.
Thanks, Division Chief Dan Phannenstiel, for sharing the details of the 2 fire incidents and the near miss. Next week, we're going to discuss the lessons learned for their department and for Dan personally. If you've experienced or witnessed a near miss and would like to have a platform to share your lessons learned with others, please contact me by visiting the SA Matters website and clicking on the Contact Us link on the top of the homepage. Think about it for a moment. The lessons learned from your near miss event, like Dan's, could save the life of another first responder. If you want to share your experience, contact me. Okay, as I always do, I want to take a moment to thank the departments and the organizations that have hosted some recent Situational Awareness Matters tour stop events. I do this to show my appreciation to the organizations who put forth all that effort to organize, advertise, and fund great training experiences for their members and others in their region. Your efforts to bring this valuable and powerful training on situational awareness and high-risk, high-consequence decision-making to your members and others in your region are greatly appreciated. Recent tour stops included the Texas Intrastate Mutual Aid Association Conference just north of Austin, the Cy Fair Fire Department just outside of Houston, the Iowa Fire Training Bureau in Ames, Iowa, the Overland Park Fire Department in Overland Park, Kansas, and where I am now in Shawnee, Oklahoma for the Shawnee Fire Department. By the time this episode airs, I will have completed my annual trek to the Boundary Waters Wilderness Canoe Area in northern Minnesota. I've taken this trip to the Boundary Waters every year since 2005. It's one of the highlights of my summer. I will have also just returned from the National Speakers Association annual convention in Phoenix, Arizona, where I was attending programs to sharpen my skills as a presenter. Now, next week, I'm going to be going on a Boy Scout high adventure trip where we'll be sailing off the tip of Florida for 14 days. This marks my 3rd Boy Scout high adventure trip that I've taken. I'm the proud father of 2 Eagle Scouts and a 3rd one on the way, and my daughter is a Gold Award recipient for the Girl Scouts, and I am big fans of both of those organizations. This year's high adventure trip entails 2 weeks with my 16-year-old son on a boat, no work distractions for me, no technology for him. Might make for a good episode of Survivor. And then I'll be back on the road sharing the Situational Awareness Matters message again. August 17th, 19th, and 20th, I'll be at Fire Rescue International in San Antonio. Thank you to the International Association of Fire Chiefs for giving me the opportunity to present at FRI more than 10 years in a row, including the opportunity to keynote the conference in Chicago a few years back. I'm deeply honored by your support of my message. August 22 to 26, I'll be delivering a Company Officer Development Institute program in Zionsville, Indiana. The Company Officer Development Institute is a leadership program designed to help company officers with the skills they need to be successful at the company level. All the soft skills, leadership, problem solving, conflict resolution, teamwork, things like that. A full week, no PowerPoint, no book, no BS, no theory, just practical skills that company officers need to be successful. Learning what they need to do to keep the problems out of the chief's office. What a concept that is. I'll be staying on in Zionsville on August 27th for an encore program of situational awareness. And then the next day, August 28th, I'm traveling up to Heartland, Deerfield, Michigan, where I'm going to be doing a situational awareness program for them. This is a great companion opportunity. If you're in Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, or Wisconsin, that's a great chance to companion on because I'm going to be driving to those programs. So I'll be passing through big parts of Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin. So if you want to companion on for a day or an evening, contact me. September 8th, I'll be at the Arizona State Fire School, where I'm keynoting their fire school on creating thinking first responders. That's also a great companion opportunity if you are in Arizona. September 10th, I'll be at the Upper Providence Township, Pennsylvania Fire Department. That's near Philadelphia. So again, another great companion program if you're in Pennsylvania, Maryland, or New Jersey. September 13 and 14, I'll be at the Horry County Fire Department in South Carolina. That's the Myrtle Beach area. Again, another good companion opportunity if you're in South Carolina or North Carolina. September 23rd, I'll be keynoting the Wisconsin Fire Chiefs Association Conference. September 29th, I will be doing a program for the Welcome Fire Department in Minnesota. And September 30th, a program for Sioux Falls Fire Department. I am keynoting their recruit class graduation and then doing a leadership program for their staff during the day. Thank you so much to all the program hosts, and here's hoping that there will be a tour stop near you and we'll get a chance to meet up. The last time I delivered situational awareness programs in southwest Minnesota, I had a chance to stop by and visit my sponsor to this podcast show, Midwest Fire. Midwest Fire makes all poly fire apparatus, and it's changing the industry. You seriously need to check them out at MidwestFire.com. Anyhow, I got a chance to sit down and talk to a few of their employees about what separates Midwest Fire from their competitors. Let's listen into a conversation I had with engineer Tyler LeBrun about lean manufacturing and how that differentiates Midwest Fire from their competitors. Let's listen in. So, Tyler, in a conversation that we had earlier, you mentioned the term lean process or lean manufacturing. And then when we were out on the shop floor, you were like snapping around these Japanese terms that, I guess in the lean manufacturing world mean something. What is all this, voodoo magic of lean manufacturing or lean process? What does it mean, and why would a customer even care that you run a lean facility?
Well, one of the big things with lean is it's very focused on the customer. Basically, you look at it as what the customer is willing to pay for. There's waste in our process. There's waste in everybody's process that they have if they own any type of business. And what waste is defined as is anything the customer is not willing to pay for. We had a good example down there of, maybe you've been in some different shops and seen stuff just scattered around everywhere, like maybe a floor jack, like somebody used it and left it right there. Well, now the next time somebody wants to go find that floor jack, if they've got to walk around for 5 or 10 minutes, that's a waste that the customer's not willing to pay for. They don't want our guys to be down here wandering around looking for parts. They want them to be putting things onto their truck, and that stuff is value added. The walking around and stuff that you're not willing to pay for is non-value added. And that's really what drives down and brings us to be able to offer something better to the customer, that we are building a truck more efficiently, which obviously passes savings on to them. We talked about our inventory control system, Kanban, one of those fun Japanese words, that basically allows for a system to be around our parts ordering, that the operators control that they go down, they reach a minimum point, they pull a card, they do that kind of stuff, but the parts are always there for them. Not only are the parts always there, but there's not an excess amount of those parts, which costs us money to carry, which we would then obviously, no doubt, have to pass on to the customer. But by reducing all these costs, getting rid of all the waste, we're really able to better give the customer a more quality truck, faster and possibly at less cost than a competitor.
So everybody here, I assume, has to go through some training to learn how to be part of a lean process manufacturing?
Yep. So there's a couple of different ways that we've done that. There's been some guys that have been able to go out and do actual hands-on training at some seminars or that kind of stuff. We've also gone out and taken tours of some real-world class facilities in the area that we've been lucky enough to have. We also do some mentorship. That's something that I've been able to take my experience and kind of help the guys look at all that kind of stuff. But it really boils down to having a team that's willing to work together and continuously improve. And that continuous improvement is the big thing, is that we don't have a set goal in mind that we are going to be at X in 2016 and then we're never going to do anything again. Lean is really about continuous improvement and just realizing that you're constantly in the pursuit of perfection. If you're not improving, you're on the decline. So that's really some of the ideas behind that, the continuous improvement, and obviously training the employees.
Well, there you have it, folks. Continuous self-improvement in lean manufacturing. It's what separates Midwest Fire from their competitors. Check them out at MidwestFire.com. Thank you, Midwest Fire President Sarah Atchison, and all of your staff for the awesome commitment that you make to improving first responder safety. And I really appreciate your support of my mission. Hey, if you're interested in seeing a listing of the upcoming Situational Awareness Matters tour stop locations, head over to the SA Matters website and click on the blue box on the right side of the homepage that's labeled Upcoming Events Schedule. The schedule is always changing, so check back often. I want to share a piece of feedback I received on the live events that I've been conducting. Every episode I ask listeners to go to iTunes and subscribe and to provide some feedback, and some do and some don't. I guess everyone just thinks that someone else will do it, but I really do appreciate hearing from people when they've got some ideas or some positive encouragement. It just makes my day. Anyhow, I don't share the feedback to brag, but rather just to show my appreciation to those who are sending me some encouragement. This one comes from James Clark from Fort Saskatchewan, Alberta. It says, Rich, thanks so much for the information you provided in the class. I truly enjoyed all of your presentations. Keep up the great work, and in my opinion, you are making a difference. I wish I could have had your insight to training years ago when I did a lot of training, and I would have done things very differently. Going forward, your insight will definitely be applied. Take care. Well, thank you, Chief Clark, for sharing that feedback. I really, really do appreciate it. If you want to send me some feedback by email, you can just go to the SA Matters website and click on the Contact Us link, or you can provide feedback on the podcast on iTunes. If you haven't subscribed yet to the SA Matters radio podcast yet, please consider taking a moment to do it by going to iTunes or to Stitcher Radio. Leave some feedback. If you like the podcast, put a 5-star review up there. This would really help me. It just inspires me to no end, and it helps others to be able to find the show too. In case you didn't know, I've written 5 books on situational awareness and high-risk decision-making. These books contain critical lessons for improving situational awareness and decision-making under stress. Why would you want any of them? Because this topic is so huge, and there's so much to learn. And you might have picked up at the beginning of the show when I mentioned it's the leading contributing factor to near misses and one of the leading contributing factors to high-risk casualties. Check the books out, videos, and everything else that I have available in the SA Matters online store. It's a clickable link on the homepage. Or you can get the books on Amazon if you want. I'll sign the books that you order from my website. I can't sign the ones that are sent to you directly from Amazon, if that's important for you. If you're not a member of the SA Matters community of learners yet, there are several ways we can get connected. First, you can just straight up join. There is more than 5,000 members connected here on SA Matters, sharing ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to train members to be critical thinkers and resilient problem solvers. Membership is free. It's free. When you sign up, I'll send you a special report that I've created just for the new members called 25 Best Practices for Improving First Responder Safety. If you're not a member yet, head over to the SA Matters website. Click on the red box on the right side of the homepage. It says Free Membership. If you want to get connected on social media, on Twitter, you can find me at Rich Gasaway or at SA Matters on Twitter. That community is about 17,000 followers of the mission on Twitter. Thanks for everybody who's coming along on that ride. You can get connected on Facebook. I have a private Facebook page, facebook.com/groups/SA Matters. You've joined the private Facebook group. There's a coupon code in there for 50% off the newest book. That'll save you $20. On LinkedIn, you can find me by searching Rich Gasaway. If you want to watch some videos, I've got a YouTube channel, SA Matters TV on YouTube. And you can watch some videos of the classes and just some other stuff that I put up there, little messages here and there and occasionally. None of them are all too long. Most of them 3 minutes, maybe upwards to 5 minutes. But I am available there also on YouTube. Well, that's it. Episode 118 is complete. Thank you again to my guest, Division Chief Dan Phannenstiel, for sharing your incredible near-miss story and the lessons that will come to our listeners in next week's part 2 of this interview. Thank you to our podcast sponsor, Midwest Fire. Thank you to all of our live event hosts. And thank you, our listeners, for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. If it were not for the listeners, we wouldn't have a show. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gasaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit samatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgasaway.com.